Hello everyone, Justin from Playing Board Games here, and today I wanted to make this quick video about Kate's potential deck building because I've seen more discussion about it online than I expected when I recorded my Hemlock Vale reaction video, and I actually find it very interesting. Not to say that I was the only person who came up with this 0502 theory for Kate Winthrop. There's been a bunch of cool theories about it, but I wanted to expand on my feelings further than I did in the initial video, so let's chat about Kate Winthrop. So, after reading Kate's signature and spoiled secret cards, I immediately thought that she was the Seeker 05 Rogue 02 that we've been waiting for. I got the feeling immediately and I couldn't shake it. This was just a hunch that I had initially, but after sitting with it further, I hope it's the case. Why? I'll get to that, but first let's chat about what made me think this 0502 deck building worked for Kate. We'll start with the spoiled secret cards here from Feast of the Hemlock Vale, which I'm still getting used to as a title. Every time I have to look it up, I'm like, what's the title of this one? But they all have a similar mechanic, these cards running through them. Does it look familiar? I'll give you a few seconds. Well, how about now? Yeah, when I was reading these cards, I immediately thought about all the Succeed by X cards that exist in the Rogue class and how well these cards would work together. Chemistry Set gives a boost to quick thinkings and lucky cigarette cases, and also just more cards on top of that. Dr. Charles West III also cares about how much you succeed by, and even benefits from having enemies at his location. Now, if only there was a way to evade enemies so you don't proc attacks of opportunity in order to get the investigation to deal damage to the enemy. If only. While this could be a case of just good design synergy with the game's card pool, player cards in expansion often give the direction to the investigators within that expansion. So what I'm saying is, while these cards can synergize with the entire card pool, generally you can find hints to the investigator's gameplay style within the cards in that investigator's expansion because the cards are made to support that investigator. Bouncing back to Kate Winthrop, I wanted to talk about her ability. This is a little bit strange, but as it sat with me further, it seemed more real for me. But there's a lot of discussion online with good reason that the Seeker 05 Rogue 02 is a very powerful card pool. And that an investigator that had that card pool would likely be very powerful just because of the card pool itself. This is why I also feel like there are signs of Kate's link to this deck building, because her main ability is essentially turning each clue into an unexpected courage and occasional control in the form of her signatures. And to go a step further, I'd argue that her ability to get +2 skill value from the Flux Stabilizer also further supports her success in the Succeed by 2 archetype. Basically, what I'm saying is that her ability, apart from these events, which the events are incredibly powerful, however, the ability is not really something as bombastic as like grabbing more clues or taking more actions. It's just more test, specifically on science and tool assets. Science and tool, notably, which I'm going to get to further in the video as we talk about science cards in specific. So the idea is that if the card pool is scary powerful, maybe the investigator's ability is weaker to make up for it. I will admit that could potentially be a reach, but it is a way to balance the power of the card pool with what the investigator can be doing. But we're going to jump to Kate's stats next, which I'll admit are actually the reason I'm slightly turned away from the Seeker 05 Rogue 02 deck building after sitting with it further. While her ability makes me think further that she is a rogue off class, the stats actually turned me away from it. Because she has 4 book and 4 foot, which is a great stat line for a Seeker Rogue, but this kind of looks familiar because it's the exact same stat line as Trish Scarborough, which you may think helps, but I actually think it hinders the argument in my head for my initial reading of this. A user on Reddit mentioned that this would likely mean that Kate and Trish could potentially play very similarly, like too similarly to each other, with a similar card pool and a similar stat line. And I think that's entirely fair. So this is like how I'm looking at this and how I've been sitting with it. And I think that's an excellent point, that Kate might not be rogue at all, right? But I do think the high end of each class plays completely differently. I think the high end of Rogue plays a lot differently than the high end of Seeker, even though there are a lot of similarities between them. But once again, I'm not really, I'm conceding that I'm not like, this has kind of turned me away from my initial assessment of Kate Winthrop. Because I saw that stat line and I said, oh yeah, this is a rogue, because I've actually seen this exact stat line on a rogue before. So maybe they don't want to just double this up and Kate Winthrop won't be Seeker at all. And she's going to be closer, sorry, won't be Rogue at all. And she'll be closer to someone like, Ursula Downs. However, with all this said, the biggest reason I hope my initial read of this is true is because of the mechanical space within each class. This is why I titled the video, I hope Kate Winthrop is the Seeker 05 Rogue 02 Investigator, and not why she is the Seeker 05 Rogue 02 Investigator. Mainly because I also don't have any sort of bravado to assume my prediction is right, but rather I want Kate to have some sort of access to Rogue because of all the new Seeker cards that were spoiled. I don't want the Seeker class to eat into another class's mechanical space without there being a reason for it, and I feel as though an Investigator linked directly to that archetype is a good reason for it. It's not an uncommon topic online to see that, in online or even in our own videos, to see that everyone talking about Seeker's ability is kind of just to have good options for everything. They get little touches of everything, and most of those touches are, unfortunately, usually pretty efficient. But there are a lot of mechanical identity to each class that is unique to them. And while there is some cross between this mechanical identity before, as you can see here with Shrewd Analysis as Seeker's slice of the XP advancement mechanic, I don't want Seeker exploring mechanic in the Rogue slice without there being a good reason other than why not. It's okay to see a Seeker succeeding at a class's archetype with that class's player cards, like you can see this with Trish Scarborough as a great example, but it's not okay if a Seeker succeeds at another class's archetype due to Seeker player cards. Sure, non-Rogue Seekers can still utilize these cards here that were spoiled for this expansion, but having the boxes Seeker, so having the Hemlock Vale Seeker splash into the Rogue class, means that I can understand the reason for this design beyond just Seeker's need to explore new design space. But I can also respect that Succeed by X might just be something that should exist in all classes. But if that's the case, Rogue should get more to make that class the home of the mechanic. So it's like, I'm okay with an Investigator using Rogue options, like a Rogue design space in their kit, if they are Rogue, right, in some way. And Luke Robinson could use the chemistry set, for example. But I do think that Trish, and potentially Kate if she is Rogue, would have more tools to take advantage of in a way that the Rogue class makes it better because it is the Rogue space. However, if Kate isn't getting Rogue and Seeker and is just getting some new design space in the Seeker class, which ultimately isn't a terrible thing, why don't we see some of Seeker's mechanical identity in other classes? I think, personally, that the Research Mechanic could have a nice flavor of a home in the Mystic class, as an example. Basically, I might be just having some own personal doomsaying for all of this, but I'm worried that this is just a sign that potentially the Rogue class could have part of its pie eaten by Seeker, which is always a bummer when you see, because I think that Seeker actually has a pretty good mechanical identity right now, and I don't think it needs more of it. But potentially they could be getting more of it. So maybe we should try, maybe we could see some other Seeker slices on someone else's plate, on a Mystic plate. Like, again, a research card for the Mystic class. All right. Enough about me. I'm boring. I talked a bunch about why I felt what I felt about Kate, but let's dive into some of the reasons that turned myself away and others away from my initial deck building assessment. First off, one that I think is entirely fair is the flavor dissonance of Kate Winthrop being a rogue, right? There is definitely some dissonance there, especially when you look at the rogue class as the criminal class. Imagining Kate Winthrop using lockpicks to investigate certainly seems a little bit screwy, there's no doubt there. However, not all of the rogues are criminals. Maybe Kate will share a similar deck building restriction to Preston, by chance. He's an 0502 investigator who cannot run illicit cards. I could see Kate doing the same because flavorfully the idea of succeeding by X could be about striving for excellence, which I think fits well for a scientist-like character. I can't take credit for that idea, by the way. That was from a user on Reddit who made me nod my head a lot while I read their comment. But with all this said, the thing that absolutely solidified the flavor of the Seeker Rogue working for Kate Winthrop for me personally came from something Bryn said while we were discussing Kate in a future video. He simply said, rogue scientist. Like, that just fits for me, right? The rogue scientist. It's like a thing. However, with all this said, I totally get if it doesn't work for you. The other common counter deck building rules for Kate often pointed out are trait-based. Maybe something like Finn or Marie with Seeker 03, Science 04, and up to 5 other yada yadas. And I think that's an entirely great theory. I think that's very sound, but I do think that it is a little bit boring for Kate. The only out-of-Seeker Science cards so far are Healing, which don't really synergize well with what we know about Kate so far. But if we do see more Science class cards in other classes being like Science-traded cards in other classes being spoiled, I'm going to instantly wager that this is the right call. All of my assessment and my initial gut feeling, I think, will be wrong. As soon as we see like some sort of Science device in like the Guardian class in the expansion. Now you might be thinking, what is the difference there? Like, what's the difference between there? Because like they already exist in like First Aid and all that. Because First Aid, while a Science card, doesn't really resonate mechanically with Kate. And I do think that if we do see a Science card in the box and it has any sort of ability to synergize with Kate, I do think this is a very good call. And not that I think that this is a bad call already, because I do think that the Science 04 or something like that along the lines trait-based, I think is like a pretty accurate call for Kate. But with all that said, my counterpoint to this is if you look at Marie's and Finn's ability, they have a pretty easy extra action that they can earn each turn. That's a nice, consistent ability that Kate doesn't really match. And it's a powerful ability too. Extra actions are very good. So I would personally argue that a weaker card pool doesn't really match up with the ability that Kate has, because one action is not equal to one unexpected courage. Especially in unexpected courage, you need to essentially make a test to get. Sure, her signature events are very powerful, but I don't really think they match the level of one additional action each turn. So if you look at everything in like these little chunks here, I don't think Kate's front and signatures balance out a weaker deck building stipulation. Now, in closing, I don't view my prediction of the 05-02 deck building essentially being the right one. It's my own personal prediction and my own personal want for Kate Winthrop. And after sitting with it further, I definitely feel like there's good reason for it. It's become something that I hope is right rather than something that I think is right, if that makes sense. I laid out what made me think that and also some reasons why they may not be, and I merely wanted to give additional context to what I mentioned in my video because I think it's an interesting discussion and also a more engaging discussion than I thought it was in passing in the video. In my video, I was just like, oh, of course this is it. But then I saw a bunch of other opinions online and I was like, there's more meat on the bone than I thought here, so I took some time myself to think about it further. I'm excited to see what her deck building turns out to be, essentially. I'm very much looking forward to seeing exactly what Kate Winthrop's going to turn out being, because I think she's a cool character. I think she's neat, and I think her ability opens her up to kind of just being good at things like essentially maybe, I don't know, succeeding by 2. I kid. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope you continue to have a great day. You watching this means the world to me, and I love new expansion season because we have so much more to talk about. Huge thank you to everyone and to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. If you want to like the video, leave a comment. It would make my heart grow 3 sizes this day. It would turn me from the Grinch I am into the Grinch who, saved Christmas. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one. And as always, GG's.